Welcome everyone to the workshop entitled The Torah in the Tarot, Revealing the Lost and Forgotten Judaic Origins in the Tarot de Marseille. And we are Shiva Center. If you're new to us, Shiva Center is a Jewish nonprofit recovery home and community that supports addicts of all kinds and people from all walks of life. And we integrate Jewish wisdom, addiction recovery resources, spirituality, and community into our container. And we're so grateful for all of you here tonight for this really special workshop with Rabbi Iggy and Stav Appel. Before we begin, I'll introduce our two hosts tonight, and then I'll just talk about some housekeeping to support a safe container tonight, or a brave container this evening, and then I will hand it off to Rabbi Iggy. So I'll start with Rabbi Iggy. So Rabbi Iggy is the founder of Shiva Center and is a renowned Talmud teacher, spiritual counselor, artist, and educator. He grew up between Belgium and Israel, so expect him to be well-dressed and blunt, as well as the United States in a traditional Jewish Orthodox home. He is author, speaker, teacher, and contributor on subjects ranging from Talmud, Jewish text, spirituality, addiction, recovery, fatherhood, and LGBTQI+ issues. And we're so grateful to have Stav Appel here tonight. Stav is author of The Torah in the Tarot, and he is a data scientist and a lifelong student of the Torah who resides in upstate New York with his wife and two children. He advises businesses on how to use data visualization technology to identify strategic insights hidden within large data sets. He speaks frequently at community groups, adult education groups, synagogues, and art galleries about the Torah hidden in the tarot. Before we move forward with our workshop, I'll just ask you to participate in mindful listening. Please keep the focus on yourself when sharing. There'll be time for sharing and asking questions. So we invite you to participate during that section. Please be kind and respectful in the chat. And please participate. Please, share insights, questions, feedback in the chat. And then Rabbi Iggy and Stav will open up for sharing and questions and engagement during this workshop. So when they do, feel free to use the hand raising feature in Zoom or physically raise your hand to let them know that you have a question and that you want to connect. So with that, I will hand it over to Rabbi Iggy and Stav. Please have a beautiful workshop this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Jess, for introducing us and for all that. Hello, everyone. This is very exciting. Stav and I have been talking about this for a little while, so it's happening and it's really cool. And I'll just say a comment to start with, which is that this is the kind of thing that when I started the Tshuva Center, this is the kind of thing that I was always thinking about, right? Everybody who knows a little bit about sort of me or what we do knows sort of I'm all about things that don't seemingly go with each other, right? Opposites that live in the same space and for all sorts of different reasons, theological and otherwise. So this is really in many ways sort of one of those great sort of like epitomes of what I always thought sort of Tshuva Center would be. So it's really a great pleasure and an honor to Stav to have you with us here. And I guess I'll just start by saying that right, whatever we hear today, whatever it is, right, this is a discussion, right? This is sort of like an opening to really our large discussion, because I think there's a lot of different threads that can be pulled and people feeling about all sorts of kind of things about sort of the marriage, if you will, of tarot and Torah, or at least sort of like the birthplace of tarot and Torah. And I want to make sure that sort of everybody here and for us is sort of we're here to have a discussion. Nothing that what we say is the truth or the thing, right? We are here to converse and sort of like to say like maybe, right? Perhaps. So that being said, so Stav, like, right? So like tell us just a little bit, right? So like how did you even get into this at all? Like, right? Like what's
Sure.
that?
So thank you for the introduction. So before we jump into the topic, let me just say, through our correspondence on Instagram, I had the luck to learn about the Tshuva Center, and the more I've learned about you and your community and your work. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to make this humble contribution to your work, because it's a wonderful, beautiful thing. It's a real part of Tikkun Olam. So thank you for inviting me to be, at least for tonight, a member of your community. I really appreciate it. So to the more mundane topic of the Torah and the Torah, this is really very accidental. I'm not a longtime tarot scholar at all, or I'm kind of in some ways I'm kind of like a very average yid. I'm just kind of a man who's gone through my life. I'm a lifelong student of Torah, but there's a lot of great Torah scholars out there. I'm not a particularly exemplary Torah scholar. I'm just someone who's always kept a Tanakh by and have read it every week, and something that's accompanied me in my life. And just by happenstance, about 4 years ago, I stumbled upon a copy of the Torah de Marseille, which is, for people who don't know, the Torah de Marseille is it's kind of the artistic ancestor of the Rider Waite Smith deck that people know about today. And when I first saw the Torah de Marseille, I just thought it was really beautiful. I thought it was a very enchanting and charming work of art. And I began to play with it, and I got really interested in it. And I started buying lots of different reproductions of it. And I started playing with it. And what I love about the Torah de Marseille is that there are all these very complicated stories in the cards, but no one really knows what the stories are. That's what's so interesting about it. But as I went through the cards, for me, it was obvious that there were a few references to Bible stories in the cards. And when I started, and as my interest blossomed into more of a fixation or an obsession, and I bought books on tarot history, I wanted to read what people were saying about this book. I was just really surprised that no one seemed to mention the Bible stories in these cards, which I thought was really puzzling. So I delved into it deeper and deeper. I thought this was kind of a real gap in communication, that people were just kind of missing these references. And eventually I saw that these Bible stories, the reason why a lot of people were missing a lot of these Bible stories is that they were, it's not that they were present, but they were actually hidden. Someone had actually actively camouflaged the Bible stories in the cards. And that the Hebrew that I took for granted, that unless you knew my Hebrew, unless you knew my understanding of the stories, you never would recognize the Bible stories. And eventually a realization dawned on me that these were not Torah stories at all. These were not Bible stories at all. These were actually Torah stories. And as I started to learn more about the historical context of what was happening to the Jewish community during the time when these cards were produced, it led me to the conclusion that this was an artifact of what we now call crypto Judaism, of secret Judaism that was alive, and that was a response to persecution at that time. Now, I don't have proof for this. Like I haven't found like a letter from a 17th century rabbi talking about his project to hide Torah stories and tarot cards. But what I'll do is, in the next hour, we'll go through the cards, and I invite everyone to reach their own conclusions, and I invite people to be as critical or as antagonistic as you'd like to be. But from what I saw, eventually it led me to the conclusion that this is way beyond mere coincidence, that this had to be the product of someone intentionally hiding Judaica in the cards.
Right. And for people, right, just so to think, right, crypto Jews, right, just to make sure that people there, right, crypto Jews are Jews who are living in a country or an area or in a state where they're not allowed to be Jews on the outside, where they're either forced to convert, right, or then, but they had to show that they're not Jewish on the outside, but would in fact keep Jewish traditions in secret at home or within communities, but on the outside they were, right, so like conversos, Moranos, so like French, you would be Catholic or whatever, so that they would not be persecuted. So that's what we talk about. We talk about crypto Jews, which is, and I know you have a couple of slides about the time in Europe of that. So we can just go into that.
All right. So I'm hoping you guys see a slide. You see a slide in my faces?
I do indeed.
All right, here we go. So I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of a history lecture, just that we're all on the same page historically. So the story, I would, after I've gone through this, and this is all stuff I did not know before I got kind of drawn into this world of studying the Torah. So I would argue that the history of the Tarot, from my understanding, really starts in the year 1240. For several centuries, there was what I would say kind of like a live and let live relationship between the Catholic Church and Judaism. And actually in France, some of the greatest yeshivot, some of the greatest religious schools in the history of Judaism were in southern France. Rashi, the greatest, one of the greatest commentators of Judaism, was in France. And I mean, France was one of the great homes of Judaism. There was a big change in the year 1240 when a Jewish convert to Catholicism by the name of Nicholas Dunin, he actually went to the Pope at the time, Pope Gregory IX, and he alerted the Pope to the existence of what he said was a heretical document, a heretical book called the Talmud. And he told the Pope that the Talmud was filled with heresies against Catholicism and especially against Jesus. And he told the Pope that this could not be tolerated. Pope Gregory IX appealed to King Louis IX, who was the king of France at that time. And they made a decision to actually conduct a public trial against the Talmud. And this is kind of a real milestone event where it was a real shift in Jewish Catholic relations, where the Catholic Church really tried to exert absolute authority over who had the right to interpret Holy Scripture. And this trial went on for several months. There were several very famous rabbis who came and spoke at the tribunal in defense of the Talmud. Several of them claimed this was all misunderstandings. Ultimately, the Talmud was found guilty, and it was declared a heretical document. And all the copies of the Talmud were collected in France and were burned in a public square in Paris. And this marks a real dramatic shift in relations, where the Catholic Church began this effort to police Judaism. If they were here today, they would say they were pursuing this for the sake of the salvation of Jewish souls. They thought Jews were on a path to hell. And it's hard for us as modernists to understand how seriously they took these declarations of faith. I mean, hell was a real place in their worldview. And this actually began, so what initially began with a purging of Jewish ideas and Jewish books, over the centuries, there were several exiles of Jews from France. And actually it was only truly legal to be a Jew in France again between the years 1400 and 1675. There were 8 separate expulsions of Jews, and it was only legal to be a Jew in France again in the year 1675. But really, when people think of crypto-Judaism and persecution, I mean, I think it was Ginger who asked the question, people really think of the Spanish Inquisition. And really in 1492 was the birth of what we call kind of mass crypto-Judaism. 1492 was a big year. Probably the biggest event of the year at that time was when the kingdoms of Castile and Aragon conquered the Muslim kingdom of Granada. And Queen Isabella had this real struggle. She wanted her struggle was to impose Catholic control over the entire Iberian Peninsula. And this is really what gave birth to the Inquisition, is they really wanted to find secret Muslims and secret Jews, people who were shielding their religious identity, because they were really afraid of political insurrection from her consolidation of political control. And it's very hard. So Spain at this time was the wealthiest country in the world. It was also one of the most populous, and it was also home to the largest Jewish community. So it sent, so at this time, if you were, so I mean, imagine if this was happening in New York. It's the equivalent as if an army came to New York and said, okay, everyone needs to accept Catholicism. And that was really the choice of Jews at that time was you could either convert to Catholicism, or you can leave the Iberian Peninsula altogether, but you would need to surrender your assets. And actually, there are a lot of scholars who say that the voyage of Columbus was actually funded by wealth confiscated from Jews who decided to sacrifice their wealth and maintain their identity and leave the Iberian Peninsula. But of course, there was a third option. This is what Rabbi Iggy referenced before. A third option is, listen, I have all this wealth. I don't want to sacrifice my assets. An option is to convert to Catholicism publicly, but to maintain your Jewish identity in secret. And that was an option that many people chose. And over generations, people maintained this crypto-Jewish faith. And actually, crypto-Judaism became so successful that eventually it became secret to the crypto-Jews themselves. there were people who there are still to this day, we're finding people who maintain a ritual of lighting candles in a closed room on Friday night, and they don't know why. Or their family eats flatbread, flat crackers in spring, and they don't know why. Or every year they have a wonderful feast to Saint Esther, and they really don't know why. So what happens over the generations, the crypto faith actually kind of slowly transformed into its own kind of its own variant religion.
Right. But my favorite stuff is I had a friend once who they were Chilean, right? And they had a tradition that every Friday they light 2 candles under the table.
Yep. Yeah, because
I remember like this is somebody I met like when in my late teens, and I remember then she would be like blah blah, then it's like, you know, and she would tell the story, and at some point I said like, you know, your family might be Moranos, might be Conversos, and she's like, what? And she looked into it, and she was like, how did you know? And I'm like, it just right. That's one of the things we find, right, which is really interesting.
Right. So yeah, and so this, so in France in particular, for a period of from 1400 to from 1500 to 1675, for that entire period, the entire Jewish community was a secret Jewish community for 175 years. And I think a lot of people are shocked to hear this because the Spanish Inquisition occupies so much of our consciousness of that period. And of course, in light of the Holocaust, it seems minor relative to the Holocaust. I mean, we focus so much time on learning about the Holocaust relative to everything that happened the centuries beforehand. So that's the end of my lecture about Jewish history. I have to give another short lecture about the history of tarot cards. Really crazy different topic, a real dramatic shift in gears. What I'm showing, these are some of the first playing cards at all. They're from the 1400s. They originated in Turkey. All the art was abstract because in Islam, you don't want any human images at all. In the 15th century, there was this innovation where people started to paint on cards of paper. They began to paint persons, and these were called triphony originally, which was a play on the word of a triumph of a Roman victory parade. And the batch size of production was 1, so these were painted by artists, and people would commission these at weddings or at family celebrations, and an artist would paint an image in the likeness of the guests at the event. So it was kind of like an early form of an album of wedding photos, you could say. And these were very popular, but they were very expensive. So it was like you had to be a really wealthy family to commission an artist to paint one of these. And then we fast forward. So what I'm showing you here are 3 generations of tarot cards. So on the left is the early 15th century cards. On the right, and you can see there's this one character. This is the Fool traveling in 3 generations of tarot cards. The one on the right, I'm pretty sure all of you have probably seen this card. It's from the 1910 Rider-Waite-Smith deck. It was actually designed by kind of what we would call a New Age guru today, Arthur Waite. It was actually painted by a woman by Pamela Coleman Smith. Fun fact, both of them were born in Brooklyn, New York, which is kind of funny. And they based their deck, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, was really based on an older deck called the Tarot de Marseille, which was created, the oldest known version of the Tarot de Marseille is from 1650 France. This is the Tarot de Marseille in the middle. This is the oldest known version. It's called the Jean Noblet. And in Europe, there's kind of there was this wonderful tradition of many different versions of the Tarot de Marseille. So the one on the left is the Jean Noblet from 1650. The one in the middle is I believe the Convert from about 150 years later. The one on the right is even later. So you can see over the years, artists copied and recopied these decks, and they kind of changed over and over again. They underwent a transformation as artist after artist copied these decks over and over again. But the deck I'm really talking about, we're going to be walking through some cards. The deck I'm talking about is the oldest one, the Jean Noblet. It's the first one. And this is the one, is the Jean Noblet from 1650 France. And again, at this point in time when this card was made, it had been illegal to be Jewish in France for over 150 years. And just as you know, so what I did is I commissioned an artist to redo these cards. So you're going to see kind of like a polished reproduction, just because it's easier for us to focus on them and talk about them. This is the original. This card is the Magician. This is the original Magician card. This is what Rider White Smith did with it. I'm going to keep showing you these as we go through some cards. I'm going to show you what the artist did with the cards, so you can see where the inspiration was. So quick question, just so this is the first time, the first time they ever have a tarot card with someone holding up a wand. This is what the character was actually holding. Anybody want to guess what this person's actually holding up? What does this actually look like? Here, I'll give you, this is a view of the original. A lot of people say this is a printing mistake. This was an error of the printer, that some of the printing block fell off, is what a lot of people claim.
It's a penis.
Excuse me?
It's a penis.
It's a penis, yes. No, so people are like really baffled. For some reason, tarot scholars don't dwell on this fact that the first time the magician ever held up a wand, it was a penis. And more importantly, you could see the artist went out of their way to show that it was a circumcised penis.
The first card had it too, hanging out between his legs.
Yes, yes. Unfortunately, I won't be able to get to that today, but yes. So first of all, any guesses as to what's in this card? We know there's a penis. Anything else? So, and one thing I'll point out, that the card number is 1. It's the card number 1. So
I thought that the yellow instrument might be for circumcision. The yellow, like a knife on a table.
Yes. And actually, I'll fast forward a little bit. So do you guys know what all these here on the right? Yeah, and I think there was Ginger who spoke. These are all antique circumcision kits. And if we go through, you can see there's a prayer book. I believe there's a red circle to illustrate how circumcision is thought of as a blood sacrifice. When you perform a circumcision, there's a cup of wine for the you put a few drops for the baby. There's a cup of spice. There's also a cup of sand. So after you take the foreskin, you put it in a cup of sand. There's kind of this triangular shape object called a magen, a shield. So you pull the foreskin through the magen and you cut it. And the purpose of the magen is to protect the inner organ of the penis. You guys see? So what I've seen is that every letter, there are 22 major arcana or trump cards, which happen to, just by sheer coincidence, people believe it corresponds to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, the alphabet. As you see, his arms are raised up like the letter Aleph.
Oh, he's an Aleph.
What I have found is that there's a lot of people who have who have a strong artistic visual ability, and they see these right away. Other people who, for some reason, for some people, it's really hard to see them. But I've seen some people see it right away. Some people it takes them a while.
Stav, can you talk a little bit, because that's something that blew my mind. Can you talk a little bit about the dice on
Sure.
the table?
So if you actually have a slide on that. One second. Here, I'll go right to that.
If it's in the thing, it's okay. You can get to it.
Here, let's talk about the dice. So on the dice, there are 8 numbers. The dice number on top are 8, but there's a total number of 15. Why 8? Any guesses why 8? So a circumcision is always conducted on the 8th day of life. No matter, even if it's on Shabbat, there's a precedent to hold the Brit Milah over to observing the Shabbat. And there's 15 total dice. There's 15 numbers, and this might come across as like inside baseball for a lot of people. But in the Kabbalah, and Kabbalah was fairly popular at this time. Kabbalah spent a lot of time in reading codes and lines of Torah where they assign numeric values to Hebrew letters. And 15 is kind of a very powerful number because it corresponds to the letter Yud, which is the 10th letter, and Hey, which is the 5th letter. So 15 is a numeric shorthand for Yah, which is the first 2 letters of the kind of the most transcendent name for the divine.
The other thing is, I don't know if people he kind of looks like a penis.
Yes, and as you know, Rabbi, can you describe more, like what makes you say that he looks like a penis? What in particular?
Well, if you look at the head, right, so like from the top red, sort of like, you know, shape all the way throughout his hair, it looks like kind of the head of the penis, and the hat looks like what we known as the orla. The bris is done to take away the foreskin, the orla. So the peeling of the foreskin is the hat, which stands for that particular part of the bris.
Yes, and in the Talmud, in the Talmud and Zohar, there's a lot of talk about how much of the foreskin you're supposed to tear off, because apparently some of our ancestors wanted to take a couple shortcuts. They wanted to just do a symbolic nip or not cut it all off. But the rabbis always say, no, listen, you really got to strip it all off.
So this is a good moment. If I don't know if anybody has questions, I guess, on the card. I mean, we're going to go through a few others, but like if anybody has a question on the card, but I will say, right, so like that there's no satanic pentagram. But I will say that sort of like when I started sort of like looking at this through with stuff, right, like I was shocked. For me, right, so like there's no doubt, right, that sort of these instruments on the table are corresponding to sort of right the kit of the Brit Milah, right, and in that sense, right, the beginning of life, right, for us, right, the first covenant of life, as we say. So I see 2 questions. I see why, and then I see Adina. So why, you're on first.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Stav. Thank you for this marvelous presentation. Can you put those 2 cards together again, please?
Which one? Which 2?
The original of the magician. Yeah. Okay. So where is that? I see the chalice. I see the sword in the magician, not in the rendition. Where is that?
Yeah. So to be clear, the card on the left is from 1650. The card on the right was made 3 centuries later in 1910. So when Pamela Colman Smith and Arthur White, when they made their deck, they clearly used the older deck as inspiration, but they really made their own work of art. I mean, the Rider White Smith they intentionally packed it with all sorts of different religious traditions and spiritual symbols. It's really a very different work of art. So I'm
sorry, Stav. From my view on my computer, the one on the right, not the one that is a little bit more cartoony or with the penis, that's
the original one.
Right. The one on the right, is that the older or is that the rendition?
The one on the right is from 1910. The one with the yellow background?
Yeah.
That's from 1910. The one on the left is from 1650.
So where did they assume this little pentagon kind of thing next to the chalice?
Well, so Arthur Waite was he himself was a very prolific writer about the occult and esoterica. Right. When he designed the cards, he just went off and inserted all sorts of new stuff. It's a really different work of art altogether. So he was inspired by the old deck, but he wasn't beholden to the old deck. He really went he had his own religious and spiritual and psychological agenda that was very different.
Yeah, he was a symbolist. He was a lot more of a symbolist and wanted to enrich the cards as they're already being used and create his own deck to create more ability to be able to read them. So he borrowed a lot of symbolism from his own knowledge and added, and he used the cards to build on top of the cards that already were known, like the magician, to then like we see in his deck, like he holds a wand or a double-sided candle or a really narrow penis.
It's all. and actually it's important. And actually, when he created his deck, or they created their deck, there was already a tradition of using these cards for fortune telling.
Right.
Whereas in 1650, no, they were only used for playing games. No one had it. No, it didn't occur to anybody yet to use them for fortune telling.
Right. Adina.
Hi, thank you so much. This may be getting into the nitty gritty on I guess, the penis theme, but when I saw the dice, I saw it initially as 1 and then 7, and in my head that's A and then Zion, like 7. And so immediately I thought of like a penis, Zion meaning penis, and also the 7th letter. Is it possible that double entendre is put there on purpose, or?
Actually, so listen, there are layers of meaning here. Before I answer your question, because it's an excellent question, I am continually blown away at how deep and how much thought there are on these cards. I've been looking at these cards every day for 4 years. I'm still discovering new stuff all the time. I had a professor of Judaic studies wrote me like 6 months ago, and he pointed out to me that the magen, this tri shape here on the left, that's actually that's actually the letter Zion from a Kabbalistic script.
Yes, from the angel script.
Yeah, from an angel script. I had no idea. He just wrote me out of the blue and told me this. So you're right. There is a connection. So and there are these Kabbalistic writings that a Zion is a vav with a crown, and a circumcised penis is a crown. It's like when you remove the foreskin, you make it into a Zion. So yes, Dina, you're totally onto something here. But it's like, it's like the Kabbalistic and the spiritual threads here are just amazing. So yes, in short, yes.
Lori.
Where is the magen that you were just referring to, Stav?
So let me go. So I believe this was meant to be a magen because it's a triangle, and when you see the old circumcision kits, there's this triangle shape. But like I just said, like I just described, this is also an angel script Zion. So I think what I've seen the artist do a lot is that he has a lot of images do double duty or not triple duty. They represent 3 things at once. So I think this was meant to be a magen, but it's also an angel script Zion, I believe. But let me just say, like, I don't really know the truth, right? I don't have any secret message from the original artist. Just after meditating on these, after focusing on these cards for a few years, this is what I see. I could be wrong, but that's what I believe.
Why was this not discovered beforehand, before you came across?
That's a fantastic question. I believe it's because for a few I think it's because for a very long time, tarot cards have just been seen as a taboo, as something forbidden in the Jewish community. So good Jewish boys and girls didn't play with tarot. They just didn't see it. I believe, but I don't really know. You might know as well as me.
I agree with that, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I think one of the important things sort of to start talking about to praying the seed, right, is that this in general, but the whole thing, it's not about truth, right? This is about interpretation. That is, sort of like we may probably never know exactly the intent of the artist or artists around this, but this is a tool for us to try and find our own interpretation through this. And I agree with Stav, by the way. I do think that sort of that the tarot has been so avodah zarah, so verboten for Jews. Plus, this is one specific, right? This is one deck within a very, right? So most people don't even know about the Tarot de Marseille, even the people who know in tarot, to deal with it. So this would require a lot more digging. So Liana, did you fix your codes? Okay, so Liana.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. We can hear you now.
Yes.
Wonderful. First, hi. Nice to see both of you. Second is this is more like larger tarot. So does the Marseille tarot deck not have the minor arcana, or it does have the?
It does not have the minor arcana are like pips of a regular deck of playing cards.
Okay, yeah.
So like that was the big thing. Arthur Waite, what he did with Pamela Smith, they made every card a picture, and that's what made it a breakout hit.
Okay.
It's a much more, they really intentionally sculpted like the tool for fortune telling, or or for reading cards.
Yeah, that's wild.
It takes a lot more work, but that's a
Right. And
it's a
Stav,
different-
how many cards are in this Tarot de Marseille deck?
There's 78 cards, but there's 22 picture cards.
Right. So the 22 picture cards in this. How many letters are in the Hebrew alphabet?
I believe there's 22, Rabbi.
Right.
Last I checked.
Why and then Steve.
Rabbi and Stav, I'm gonna just take a really brief moment. I'm almost in tears in my kitchen right now. And the reason I'm in tears is because my mom passed away last year, right?
Mhm.
And my mom believed in tarot. My mom was a Holocaust survivor. Not only did she believe in tarot, and it's just now coming to me, like almost at her yard site. Like, who has those tarot cards? When we cleaned out the condo, who took those tarot cards? And why my mom saved them. And she was extremely into numerology. Like, she had this string with a ring, and she would go back and forth. I am extremely moved by this presentation, and thank you very much.
Thank you, my pleasure. There's a really odd overlap between the tarot community and the Jewish community, which we could talk about. It's just a lot of the major writers and artists and explorers of tarot, for some reason, have been Jews. We could,
Steve, and then we should move to the next card, I think.
Yeah.
So am I, as Dorothy Kilgallen would say, am I correct in assuming that these secret Jews developed this tarot, even though we are, as Jews, were forbidden to use the tarot? So the general population of Jews were forbidden, but the secret Jews did their own thing and used them?
Well, so yes, but no, because in your description of what you've condensed about 3 centuries of events in that description. So in 1650, someone created this deck, and people were selling it. It was like a toy. People used it to play games.
Right.
I have my own theory.
Right.
I have my own theory why they did it. I think someone had a very clever idea to use playing cards as a clandestine tool for Jewish education. I have no proof for that. That's the conclusion I reach when I read through these. People started using these cards for fortune telling much later, only in the 1800s, and then it took on. And I think by the 1800s, all the Judaic connections had been forgotten largely.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's no tarot to be forbidden at the time that they're inventing tarot.
Yeah. So listen, there's a lot of there's so much more in this card, but I'm gonna fast forward us to another card.
Please.
All right, here's the Lover's card. And listen, I don't want to go through these cards and like tell you the solutions, because that's kind of like hearing someone read out answers to a crossword puzzle. I think that's a little boring. I would much rather let you guys try to solve it. I suspect that most of you know enough Judaica to know the secret content of this card. This is what Raider White Smith did. But in the original Lover's card, there's 2 people and there's Cupid, and it's like a beautiful romantic scene. But in the Tarot de Marseille and the Jean Noblet, there's a trio. And a lot of people are like, why is there 3 people in the Lover's card? Lovers are supposed to be 2 people in Cupid. Why are there 3? A lot of people say, oh, obviously this is a man and his wife and his mom. He's getting by his mom. Some people say it's a man and his wife, but he's being tempted away by a prostitute. So there's the virtue of fidelity to your wife. There's the vice of going off with a courtesan. So first question, anybody recognize, now remember there was that theme of an olive was in the first card. So might there be a Hebrew letter in this card?
We'll just tell people that it's staring you right in the face.
It's right. It's right, so obvious that
nope, it's right in front of you.
The 6th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Vav.
Right, Yaniv. Yaniv just guessed it.
Oh, you need to get okay. There's your Vav, like right there in the middle of the card. So it's kind of a joke. It's like if you don't know Hebrew, you're not going to see it. You're just going to see like another. All you see is another.
Oh wait, so Leslie. I don't know if you see that. Do you see the comments? Stav?
No, I don't.
All right. So there's one very interesting by Leslie Klipstein.
It looks
So-
to me like Jacob with Rachel and Leah.
Yes, thank you. Exactly. That's like that's what they call a bullseye in archery. Yes. So in the Torah, there's a famous love trio. We don't think of it as a love trio, but there was Jacob, Rachel, Leah, and Leah. Jacob is also in Kabbalah. Jacob has a unique relationship to Vav. The six sefirot of Tiferet is associated with Jacob in particular. So he gets the number 6. There's another reason why he gets the number 6, and it's related to the question. So anybody want to venture a guess on who is Rachel and which one's Leah, which one's Rachel and which one's Leah? The artist let us know which is which.
I would say Rachel's on the left and Leah's on the right.
Why do you say that?
Because Rachel's always portrayed as like the prettier one and stuff, and Leah looks more stern there and heavier.
So okay. There's a more decisive hint than that. It's actually not even. It's more of a decisive. It's like a real decisive signal as to who's who.
She's unloved.
I'm sorry. She's on love.
She's unloved.
Which one's on love, by the way? Well, the one he's looking away from.
The one on the right.
Yeah. So how many children did they have? Any of you remember?
Got to ask David.
Two. They had 2.
Well, altogether, Jacob had 12, right? He had 12 sons.
I thought you were Jacob and Rachel.
Sons. For better or for worse, the people focus on the 12 sons as opposed to the daughter. So if you notice really carefully, in one woman has 4 flowers in her hair, and if you notice really closely, there are actually stars of David in her hair. And the other woman has 8 leaves in her hair. And there's a great story where Rachel actually Leah actually one night she wanted an extra night with Jacob, so she actually gave she instructed her son to give Rachel mandrake flowers, mandrake plants. So actually, the flowers in her hair they're mandrake flowers, but they're also stars of David. But now with that additional information, what you can see is that the artist hid in their hair. He hid the family tree. So Rachel herself had 2 sons, but her maidservant had another 2. Leah had 6 sons, and her maidservant had 2. So you can see there's 6 leaves that are sticking up, and there's 2 lower leaves to kind of signal to you that she had 2 children, that Jacob had 2 children with Leah's offspring. And I would never remember that, but I can use the count of flowers and leaves in their hair as a way to remind me how many sons each one had. I also believe, Rachel is reaching for his heart, and Leah is actually reaching for his shoulder. And any guesses as to who this guy is in the sky? Is he just camouflage, or do you think he has? Is there any connection to Torah here? Excuse me.
Maybe an angel.
Yeah. So Jacob had a lot of encounters with angels, right? So actually, in Jacob's life, there's a reoccurring theme of blindness and angels. So he actually capitalizes on his father's blindness to steal his father's birthright. But then it's in the blindness of his nuptial night that he's actually wedded off to Leah and not to Rachel. And then when he's about to be confronted by his brother Esau, who he cheated, in the blindness of that night, he wrestles with an angel all night long. And actually, in the midrash, when he meets his brother in the morning, he tells him, he says, "Oh, you have like the face of an angel," because he's overcome his fear and his anger against his brother. So that and he also famously saw angels traveling up and down the ladder. So blindness and angels is a reoccurring theme. And also his brother Esau was noted as a hunter and an archer. So you can see the artist camouflaged. Oh, and interesting enough, when he wrestled the angel all night long, he actually tore the socket of his hip socket. And you can actually see this little red mark is like the shape of the top of a thigh bone. But again, I don't know. This is what I see in the cards. This is for me the story of Jacob, Rachel, and Leah pops up to me on this card.
I don't know if you want to stop out of the presentation for a second, Stav, sort of like, but I do believe that one of the reasons why I'm interested in this and interested sort of in bringing this is because I do think, right, for us, for right people in recovery and in general, I think one of the hardest things to do is create meaning. And I think that sort of for me, what really fascinated me about this as a tool is to take it away of the realm of using it for predicting the future, but using tarot as a way to looking inside rather than looking outside. And in that sense, right, if I present a card, if I draw a card, whatever, and looking at what does the small detail mean to me is a tool that I can use as a skill building for making meaning, right? It allows me to be able to say, okay, now, right, whatever, Stav, if you want to go to the next card, right, sort of like to go and see like, okay, how do I read this? Because then the whole world can become my tarot. Right? Every text becomes my tarot. Every story becomes my tarot, right? And it's a way to sort of to teach people, right, how to become more aware and more interested in the details of our interpretation of these cards, right? And that's really, I think, is important because I think that the beauty of the origin of the Jewish crypto element is part of what we're doing, and part of what I think is kind of the holy work for Stav is how do we uncover some of the meanings of perhaps the original deck, which is here's a story, now read it.
Okay. So shall I move forward?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I'm jumping because we only have a few minutes. Unfortunately, it's sad to me because I mean, like, there's so much here to digest.
There's 22 of them.
So here's a card that so this is the Hangman. This is the Hangman that is the Rider Waite Smith. The left is the Hangman.
Marseille.
This is the 1650 version. First of all, did anybody see a Hebrew letter here? So the 12th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Lamed.
That's right. Leslie again for the win.
So again, this is like you can kind of see how all the letters, they're present, but they're also highly distorted. So I often I see it's like the letters are half there, they're only half present, the other half is concealed. And there's this beautiful metaphor throughout the cards. Is in some sense the Torah would say, I believe, is a metaphor for the crypto-Jewish faith, where in outwards, in public, you would appear as a Catholic, as just a normal Frenchman or Spanish woman, but in secret you would have a Jewish life. And likewise, the letters in one sense are completely concealed, but if you know where to find them, they're present. So any guesses who this Hangman might be?
Haman.
Haman, right? So and actually here I'll give you this is an illustration from that's what I came to the conclusion. This is clearly Haman. Here's an illustration of an old Megillat Esther, I think from the 15th century. And Haman was famously hung on a tree. He was hung alongside his 10 sons, who were also they were all hung at the same time. If you notice, there's 10 cuts on either side of him. And actually, you can I found that I believe that the artist was really conveying a very, very specific lines from the Megillat Esther here. The Megillat Esther says at the end of the story, it describes how Purim is to be celebrated on the 14th day, and there's 14 buttons. On the 12th month, the card number is 12, And there's a very famous line where it says, this month was turned over. It was nafoch meyogon l'simcha. It was turned over from a day of mourning into one of joy. So people often speculate. They're like, why is this hangman happy? Why is this person he's happy because this is Purim. And on Purim, you turn over sorrow into joy. One thing, I mean, personally, I'm just, I own like maybe at this point, like 20 or 30 books on the history of tarot cards. And people speculating as to what the meanings of these cards are. Some are really scholarly and serious. Some are just kind of like poetical riffs and abstract meanderings. The total number of references I have found between the hangman and Haman in any book or any literature or any scholarly journal is a total of 0. I do not know why. I find that I find that completely just weirdly baffling, because I mean, like, yeah, he's a uniquely Jewish villain, but if you go to any museum in Europe, you see tons of depictions of Old Testament Bible stories. Like Renaissance Italians and French love Bible stories. They love them. How on earth no one ever drew a connection between the hangman and Haman is a real puzzle that I do not know the answer to. Also, in many later cards, they always make a point of having the hangman have these pockets, and Hamantashet in Yiddish are Haman's pockets. So something was there. So it lets us know there was some other Judaic thread. Any questions? So any questions or comments before I go to another one? No? Okay.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure, Zev.
So yeah, I have this kind of just like a Kabbalistic tarot deck that I found randomly on eBay. Can you see the?
Yeah.
Okay, so it says that the hangman is associated with Mem. Can you explain that for me?
So this is really interesting, Zev. So there is a rich tradition of many people associating these cards with Hebrew letters and with Kabbalah. So there was an interesting artist or esotericist that his name was Oscar Wirth, who he himself published a set of the Tarot de Marseille, and he assigned Hebrew letters, because a lot of people made the connection, like there's 22 cards and there's 22 letters, and lots of different artists made decisions about which card goes with which letter. And for some reason, people just jazzed it up. They just made their own artistic decisions. I will humbly state, I think I cracked the code, because the artist did throw a couple of curveballs that are rooted in specific quotes from the Zohar. But there are a lot of artists who think the hangman is associated with Mem. I just think that was just kind of. No, I mean, and there were, and truth be, and so, and if there was an academic here, if there was a serious academic from this period, they would say, listen, there was this whole school of Christian Kabbalah. There were a lot of Christians who kind of have adopted Kabbalah and redeployed it in their own ways. And we can have a debate. So there might be a Christian Kabbalist who would say, no, this is Christian Kabbalah. I don't believe so. I mean, for me, I see so many Judaic ritual objects intentionally hidden. I don't know why a Christian Kabbalist would do that. But in short, long story short, there's a really rich history of people making all sorts of creative decisions. But in general, they didn't know Hebrew. It's kind of that was the key advantage I had over others, is that I know the Torah in Hebrew, and I knew the specific literary references they were making to the Torah.
Yeah. Barry?
Thank you. It's very interesting today. I wasn't going to say anything, but a colleague of mine who just passed away last year, Rabbi Stephen Fisdell, he was the head of the Center for Jewish Mysticism here in Northern California. He also was a PhD from Hebrew University. He was an expert in Semitic languages, an interesting, amazing guy. We're friends. But he also produced a deck, a tarot deck. It's a beautiful one. I don't know if you've ever seen it before, but he's written several books on it, and he was also using it a lot of in a lot a different way than I guess most people would do, but it's a very interesting thing to look at what his work was. Stephen Fistel, Rabbi.
Cool.
I think I've heard of that deck. Yes, and I think I've seen his books actually. Yes.
Cool. Should we do more cards?
Yeah, I'm gonna. All right, you see that?
Yes.
14th letter. This is the 14th card. Do people see a Hebrew letter or the inspiration of a Hebrew letter? And I think by now you may get the design motif of the artist, half concealed, half revealed. And while you're thinking about that, let me just say, like, it's unbelievable. There's so many creative essays of people theorizing as to what are those magic. There are these two magic jugs with this like stream of air levitating in the air. A lot of people have written really beautiful essays about alchemy, transmutation, purification. Any guesses at what letter is in this card? Or inspired this card, I would say. So the 14th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Nun. And this Nun is a really big. Anybody have any guesses as to what these jugs are that have befuddled so many writers over the years? I fancy most of you who have actually touched these jugs at some point.
Actually, it's funny. I don't think we did this card, but I actually have a guess.
What's your guess?
It's a Nun for Natla. It's a Nun for Natilat Yadayim.
Yes. I actually have these jugs in my house.
That's right.
I have them right here. But every morning you say, you do Natilat Yadayim. And it's very important when you pour the water out, you have to catch it in another vessel. You don't pour it on the ground.
That's right, Rachel. James.
And there's two handles, so you maintain purification. You don't want to. If you only have one handle, you'll get another hand dirty with the filth of the other hand. And at the time of the Inquisition, there's this great document that the Holy Office of the Inquisition, they put out a document to help people identify crypto-Jews. And one of the things they said is, if your neighbor frequently washes their hands, that's a telltale sign that they're observing the laws of Moses in secret. I don't know. So is this a coincidence? I don't know. It just seems kind of like out of all you guys can reach your own conclusions. I have my conclusion, but it's for me, it's the conclusion I reach is that this is Netilat Yadayim, and there's a lot more hidden in this card. We have time for one more, you think?
What time is it? Yes, we do. We have about 10 minutes. So
this will probably be the last card we do. And it's I listen, I intentionally, this is a card I have not, I very rarely show in public because I think this is such this is a real massive so I'm showing you the original card. The reason I'm showing you the original is that I think my reproduction doesn't really do it justice. So this is the original moon card. This is the card from Raider White Smith. There are two animals barking at the moon. What do you guys think? What do you think's in this card? First of all, do you recognize any? This is really hard. I mean, I want you guys to wrestle with it. If anyone's able to solve this, I'll be deeply impressed because it took me. Actually, I'll tell you the truth. I actually was speaking publicly at an art gallery about this card. And I said, I'm not able to find the Hebrew letter. And then someone in the audience found it for me. Actually, a lot of the things I found were from people in audiences telling me, oh no, you missed this, you missed that. Like the degree of camouflage was really impressive. I actually believe, I really hope one day people recognize to what extent the artist of this deck was really a genius.
Right, so Liana has her hand up. I don't know.
All right, Liana, what do you say?
Okay, the only piece of Torah that I can think of with barking dogs is when they're leaving Egypt. It says, God says, and no dogs will, it's like this mystifying line that I had to actually translate from Hebrew. And I sat there for like 20 minutes, like, what? And it just says, when you leave, they're going to give you all their stuff, the Egyptians, and no dogs will bark at you, which then makes me think that this sea thing underneath is possibly the parting of the sea. And they're leaving Egypt.
Yeah, I'm gushing with joy right now. So So the actual line is, it's on the night of the killing of the firstborn. It says that in Egypt, the dog will bark all night long, but amongst the Israelites, they will not sharpen their tongues. In a lot of English translations, they say, and they won't bark. A lot of English translations gloss over that sharpen their tongues. That's like kind of a key line. And actually, if you see, they actually show the animal. They show his tongue. They go out of their way. The artist went out of his way to show you the dog's tongue. But what's the other animal? There's two animals. One's a dog. Do you have any guess what the other animal is? Now that you know the context.
Oh, looks like a
It's
lamb.
like a goat. A lamb? A goat.
A lamb or a goat. Now, what does a lamb have to? So we know we're in Egypt.
Hadgadya for the lamb, right?
The
in
lamb.
there.
So a lamb is a pretty important animal on Passover night. What do you do with the lamb on Passover night?
It's the Paschal lamb.
You actually kill it. You kill the lamb and you smear its blood on your doorposts. So you can actually see there's the red blood. So those are the two key animals are the dogs who don't sharpen their tongues, and there's the lamb that you kill. You smear its blood on its blood posts. Okay, but we've only just begun. Wait a second. So but we still didn't find the letter. And let me tell you something. This card is jam packed. Like we could have just met for an hour and just spoken about this card. So by Liana, you should be like it took me like. It took me like 2 years to find that connection. So kol hakavod, hats off to you that you. What else is here?
Anybody else? In 2 minutes or less, because we've got 6 minutes.
Anybody else? All right. So first of all, I'm gonna give you the Hebrew letter. This is a surprise. This is a curveball. So the main Hebrew letter in this card is a mem, which is out of order. And there's a long reason why it's out of order, but there's a mem. The whole card, if you look at the body of water, it's in the shape of a mem sofit. Mem is the first letter in Mitzrayim. What else is it the first letter of?
Matzah?
Matzah. Now, why? No, so
Maror.
Mishnah.
Right.
Mishnah.
Yes, but so someone said matzah. Do you guys happen to see? Did you see any matzah in this card by any chance?
Yeah, it's staring at
Yes, in
us.
the bottom. Yeah, the back part of the bottom.
There's actually three on Seder night. You put 3 circles of matzah. The matzah is actually in the card. Is it? So a big thing is that this is you won't. Is there any Spanish speakers on the call? You're a Spanish speaker? So what is a lobster? So a lobster in Spanish and also in Old French. Lobster also happens to be the same word for locust. So this lobster, it looks like a lobster in the water, but if you were a Spanish speaker and someone said, "Oh, there's a lobster in the water, it's a locust," and actually one of the and what you find in this card is that they've thrown a bunch of they've hidden a bunch of plagues here. So first of all, there's the dog barking. There's the lamb you're supposed to kill. There's a light in the sky that's covered. So one of the plagues is a covering of the celestial objects. There's hail in the sky. And this lobster is also a locust. And in one of the plagues, the locusts are over Egypt. And at the end of the plague, Moshe sends the locusts into the Red Sea. However, remember, I'm sorry. And then there's the paschal, there's the blood on the doorposts. However, there's a major curveball here. This is the mem card. There's a reason why it's a mem. That's a long story, but just go with me that it's a mem. There's another major Judaic ritual object, and the ritual object that's probably in most of your homes. There's another major Judaic ritual object hidden in this card. Let me go back here.
A mezuzah?
Okay. Due to the brevity of time, I'm not going to be sensitive. No, the answer is not a mezuzah. It's something else. But you're on track with a mem.
Somebody says, Zev says menorah.
All right. Where's the menorah?
Zev, where's the menorah? Also, Leslie says menorah.
Yeah, like the Hanukkah in the lobster.
It's the lobster.
So there's actually. So I'm going to go back to the original. So let me go back to the original so you see it. So the original, you see this circle of light? All right, but that's not the only menorah. Do you see the other menorah?
Next to the dog, like this is like really tiny for me to see this picture, but
Sorry. There's actually 3 menorahs in this card.
We're gonna eat soon. It's over in 3 minutes.
Is it the top of the castles?
I'm sorry.
No worries. There's actually 3 menorahs. There's one.
The
So,
lobster's arm.
excuse me.
The lobster's claws. The
The lobster, I believe I've come to the conclusion the lobster is 1. He has 8 arms. Right. So the lobster is the 9. It's kind of like the menorah with 9. But if you look, the buildings are also menorahs.
Yeah.
Particularly this one is very prominent. This one really says I'm a menorah. And if you look really closely at the tops of the buildings, you can see that they're actually 4-pronged and 3-pronged shins. They're also the shins on the tefillin. So what you find is that there is matzah, and there is Mitzrayim, which is Egypt, but there's also the menorah. And interestingly enough, if you count the spots in the sky, there are 22 almond shapes. And in the description of the menorah in the Torah, the very first menorah was decorated with 22 almond blossoms.
Hashkadia, huh?
So, and interesting enough, and one little tidbit, if you count these marks in the center here, there's actually like these little lines, there's 15 of them. Again, it's the Yud Hey. So you can see how, and if anyone knows Hebrew well, this lobster actually is also a tzaddik tzofit. So what you see hidden, so that lobster, it's a menorah. It's also the locust in the water, and it's also a tzaddik tzofit. So it's doing triple symbolic duty. You can see how. So it's like when I see this, I'm like, oh my god, like how much could this artist jam pack into this card? The guy was a genius. It's just that's why I come to the conclusion that I really believe this was created over decades of work. I believe there was a community of people, and they really intentionally filled these cards with as much content as possible, because it's just too. It's hard for me to imagine one person in a weekend like came up with all this. It's too brilliant.
Stav, it's 9:15. There's 3 questions or 3 hands up for people, or 2 hands I see who still have questions. So if you want, we can next. Sorry, I was looking at the chat. Yes, Adina.
My question was to that last piece, the mem. Do you mind pulling that up for a half second? Sorry, my apologies.
No worries.
So we have like a pretty, while you're doing that, we have a pretty old Haggadah for Passover, and in it, like, it has like a lot of pictures of the closed mikvahs that women weren't allowed to go to during Mitzrayim. Is it possible that those structures in the back with the like red slashes are closed mikvahs? Because it's also a mem.
It is very possible. I'll need to. Thank you. I mean, I can't tell you how many. I found so many things like that have been pointed out to me by other people. So it sounds like I will research that further. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
I didn't even know about that. So thank you.
Cool. Zev.
So the Rider Waite deck, I read a kind of just like interpretation on the internet that pointed out a lot of like anti-Semitic like imagery. Is there much of that in the?
I mean, there's. It depends how you define anti-Semitic. I mean, I could see someone accusing the Rider Waite deck of being cultural appropriation, like, oh, they're kind of borrowing our Judaic symbols. I mean, it is interesting. They saw a lot of the Judaica I see. Like they're certain there's this one character, the high priestess is her scroll says Torah on it, so they knew to make Judaic connections. Someone could say, hey, they're stealing our gig, they're stealing our thunder. But I personally don't read it as anti-Semitic, but that's a personal decision.
Okay, thank you.
Lori.
Yeah. So the fact that they're using a lobster, you know, which isn't kosher, is that a way for them to hide maybe that it was Jewish, or was it?
That's the conclusion I reached, because it's like who would think, who would think the lobster is actually a menorah? But you and I came to the same. I mean, that's the logical conclusion. But again, we don't. Unfortunately, we have no letter from the original artist to know for sure.
And is it kosher? Let's say it wasn't a hidden painting and everything. Let's say in regular Judaica, is it kosher to use a lobster? If it's yeah.
That's it. I'll ask, is it kosher to have a lobster in art?
In Jewish art, let's say in Judaic, or let's say, obviously, I don't think you'd have it at the synagogue, or,
Well, by the way, there are depiction of the zodiacs in synagogues, in old synagogues, and there is a depiction of zodiacs in the house of Rabbi Yehuda, the patriarch in Tzipori. So it is not uncommon. I mean, I don't want to say it's common, but it's not rare for non-religious, for I would say zodiac images, non-Jewish images to appear within Jewish context as well. So it does appear. Again, it's not common, but it's not rare.
You can look at it, but you can't eat it. Yeah.
That's right. You can make a lobster chanukia. It would be kosher if it's but no. Yes, Steve and then Lori.
Well, EIL and Stav, your intellect, the depth of your intellect is fascinating, and I want to ask a general question. I have the feeling that they started to do these cards to keep us connected to who we were at a time when we weren't allowed to be who we were. So these are all things to remind us what was going on in our history. Is that part of it?
I believe so.
That's what my heart tells me, but that's my heart. I can't know for sure, but yeah, I believe so.
I believe so.
The reason what they want to have all this Judaism in a deck of cards, if not to keep showing us what was going on, what we had to remember.
Right. When I started talking to Stav, I told him about two things. One, that this is sort of for me a physical depiction of like Chad Gadya, right? For like the song and Passover, right? Where Chad Gadya is like, right, is like, 12 stars, 10 members of 10 commandments, right? 3 fathers, 4 mothers, like that song, right? This is the physical depiction of such things. And also I told Stav that when I was growing up, right, we weren't allowed to have like baseball cards or anything like that, right? So we had rabbi cards, and which is true, right? And I remember later on, I got really in trouble when I went to my rabbi and I said like, but how do we know how Rabbi Akiva looked like? Like sort of like, right? He's a first century person. There's no pictures. There's no drawings. Like, how do we know?
Hey, he had a long beard. And,
right, exactly.
He had a book. It's fine.
Right. He thought, as usual, I was trying just to be a wise ass, which I guess I was. But these games of inculcation that are constantly sort of part of these things. Yeah. Everyone, thank you. Stav, thank you so very much.
My pleasure.
I don't know if you still got to see but like there's so many people in the comments who are like, we have to have more, so we have to talk about doing more. Thank you very, very, very much. Not just for your wisdom and for your discovery, but also for really sharing with us sort of your openness to all that, and sort of to learn, and not just to teach, which is always amazing. And for us, I mean, right, this is for me, always new things, right? Always new things. And even when we think like, oh, I know so many things and there's no way there's this and that, Judaism here, Judaism that, or whatever, there's always, right, here you go, something that somebody that does and discovers. And then lastly, and this is really, really important, I'm sure there were moments, as you said, and other people as well, like that you said, oh, surely somebody else has found this other than me. Surely somebody wrote about this. And I think that nagging voice in our head that says like, there's no way that little old me is actually discovering something new, right? And the voice that we have to say in the other side of this is like, no, you have to say your piece, because in fact, maybe nobody else did it. And I think, right, it's such a great testament to your spirit and your bravery and your ability. And I wish all of us would have that voice in our head that says like, just because nobody else said it doesn't mean that you can't say it. So
that's a really beautiful concluding note. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the only thing else I would add is like, I'm so open. I'm so happy for the opportunity to share this, because this is not about me. Like my hope is that I become the smallest of footnotes, because I really believe this is an artistic treasure that belongs to the Jewish tradition. So I'm so happy to share it with others.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.